Hello, welcome to the Scheduling Infrastructure and Business Rules or SIBR overview for EDAM and EDAM Part 1. So my name is Heidi Carter. I'm one of the lead customer education trainers here at the ISO in the customer readiness team, which is part of the stakeholder affairs and customer experience division. Very glad you can join us. I look forward to taking you through this training. So what are you going to learn through this course? By completing this, you're going to be able to describe the basic use and process flows of the SIBR user interface. You're going to be able to explain the process for gaining access to SIBR and also able to locate useful SIBR reference resources. So to meet the growing demand for additional SIBR training, we're launching a 3-part training series, beginning with today's introductory session, which is actually made up of 2 parts. So in this first session, we're going to focus on the fundamentals of SIBR, what the system is, how to access it, where to find key reference materials, and also provide a high-level overview of the SIBR user interface and its basic process flows. We'll also review the steps required to gain access to SIBR and also how to locate helpful support resources. The second session is going to be SIBR fundamentals, and we're going to take a deeper dive into the system by exploring core interface elements, such as the icons, basic navigation, and essential functionality. So we're going to walk through the bid submission and validation processes. We're going to include examples of both energy bids and ancillary service bids. And we'll also examine the resulting outputs. In the third and final session, we're going to provide a detailed walkthrough of more complex bid submission and validation scenarios. So we're going to cover transfer system resources, or TSRs, for all types 1 through 4. We'll also be talking about the transient TSRs, the contract reference numbers, and transfer capacity limits. So we're going to highlight the nuances and considerations that are needed to enter acceptable bids, and we'll work through error resolution examples with step-by-step corrections. Now, I mentioned transfer system resources, but we may also be including some intertype scheduling in that to show what's the same as today and what's going to be changing. So we might also include future sessions that will be added over time. So please sign up for the daily briefing to be notified when we finally schedule these trainings, because we will be doing the SIBR fundamentals in a little bit later in February. We will do the advanced SIBR in the first couple weeks of March. So as those plans get finalized, we will put out a notice through the daily briefing and let you know to go to the ISO calendar and be able to find the registration link to sign up for and register for those courses. To sign up for the daily briefing, you can visit the ISO website at www.caiso.com and then scroll down to the bottom of the page and select the subscriptions link, and that will get you that notice. Let's do a SIBR overview, and especially in context of the markets. So this is the wholesale energy market. The ISO consists of distinct day-ahead and real-time processes, and those run for each trade date. So these market processes support the trading of energy products and services that will help participants meet their reliability needs and also serve their load. This diagram here offers a high-level overview of the timelines for both the day-ahead and real-time markets. As you can see, the day-ahead market opens 7 days prior to the trade date, or also known as the operating date, which is when bidding begins, and then it closes at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So that's something to note if you're in a different time zone. Anytime you hear us refer to time, we're always referring to Pacific prevailing time. And those bids for day ahead the market closes on the day before the actual trade date. So that's the date that the energy is flowing. Participants may submit bids using an API or an application programming interface. I know a lot of people do that. They also can use a third-party software that your developers will work with our processes and build those into a more more work-friendly computer interface for you that meets your company's needs. So that's an option as well, but it still does speak to cyber. But then the other option is the cyber tool, the user interface of cyber. So bids can be put in through there. And then after the day-ahead market closes, the market's processes begin, the market clears, and then the results are published. The market results are published around 1300, and those actually come out. Those results are shown in Customer Market Results Interface, the CMRI, which does require certificate access, and it provides more detailed information about your bids and resources, as well as the Open Access Same-Time Information System, OASIS, which provides public information, but it also provides information on awards. So once the results publish around 1300, the real-time market processes begin, and that allows participants to submit their bids in real time. Again, they're able to use cyber, and those will be for your real-time bids, and that could include the bids that have must-offer obligations due to your day-ahead market awards. So cyber is just one of the essential components of the broader ISO system that allows for certified scheduling coordinators, or SCs, to participate in the ISO markets. Its primary role is to receive bids and trades for energy and energy-related commodities, and then validate them for accuracy and automatically adjust any entries that require correction. Once validated, cyber then stores these bids and trades in a centralized database where they're then turned into the market system engines and processed there. Throughout the process, cyber is also providing necessary feedback to scheduling coordinators by displaying message that confirms submissions, or they might identify issues that need attention. It ensures transparency and also leads to smooth market participation. So as much as you're doing in there, submitting bids, it is also an informational tool that can guide you. Here you can see a screenshot of the cyber user interface. In today's class, we're not gonna be diving into the user interface. Instead, we're gonna focus on the foundational pieces. So how to access this tool, where to find key information, general process flow, so that when you begin exploring the interface, you're going to have the context you need to be able to support your bidding practice and navigate cyber more confidently. So it's a lot of the input that goes into, your bidding, whether it's your tool or cyber itself, is really on the decision making that you're going to be doing to be able to submit the best, most accurate bids for you. In the next course, we're going to walk through the elements of this display here, including descriptions of the icons, the different fields, the different displays that are in this UI, and also core functionality. Before attending that session, we highly recommend reviewing Section 2 of the Cyber User Guide, which provides clear explanations and also step-by-step guidance on how to use cyber correctly. But first, let's talk about access. How do you even get to cyber? So to use cyber or any of the other ISO applications, you must first have a valid certificate with the ISO, and your organization's User Access Administrator, or UAAs, have been qualified to be able to provision your access to the specific tools required for your role. And when we talk about your role, you'll see the different ISO applications, but you won't be able to be granted all of those because depending on your role, dependent on standards of conduct of market versus reliability information, you may be able to access a certain application and not the other. But your UAA will have received that guidance and be able to help guide you in turn. So once the access is provisioned, you can sign into the Market Participant Portal, also referred to as the MPP, and you can find a link to that at the bottom of the ISO website. And there you're going to be able to find access to cyber as well as any other ISO systems that you may be granted authorization to use. Because provisioning is required for all the ISO applications and secured portals, it's important to contact your organization's UAA if you currently don't have access. So they can initiate or adjust your permissions, and that will allow you to be able to work in the necessary applications under the appropriate role, such as SIBR if you're going to be submitting or validating bids. If you're unsure who serves as your organization's certified UAA, you're going to be able to reach out to the ISO or to your client representative, and they'll be able to provide assistance. So one way that you can reach out to the ISO is at the bottom, near the bottom of the page, a contact us link. To learn more about how to access the ISO application, we do provide a computer-based training, which is titled How to Gain Access to the ISO Applications. So that will answer a lot of your questions about the different applications and also how you will access those. So earlier I mentioned reference materials. There are a lot of them. There's a lot of great information out there, but sometimes it can be very overwhelming, and sometimes even knowing where to start to look can be a little difficult. So let's show you where some of this information is to guide you there, to be able to start, look at that, and maybe be able to answer some of your questions that way. But knowing where it is sometimes half the battle. So we do have a wide range of valuable information. It's available to support your use of SIBR. Here you see a screenshot of our public page that is for the SIBR infrastructure business rules for bidding. And so it provides a lot of great information for the current production environment, as well as for upcoming enhancements, such as those that are being introduced by the Extended Day Ahead Market Initiative, the Day Ahead Market enhancements, DAME initiatives. So the ISO provides detailed business rules that govern how SIBR operates, along with documentation outlining any future modifications that may be tied to the EDAM implementation or other implementations going forward. When changes occur, release notes are published to highlight updates that are made to these business rules, that maybe are made to the user interface. Maybe there is a new functionality that's going in. Maybe we're removing a column. Maybe there's a change to one of the displays. If that occurs, whether it has to do with EDAM or any other changes that are made, we do have release notes that are published, and those highlight these updates and make sure that you're able to follow along, stay informed of what these changes are. Now, for those of you, let's say you have been provisioned access to SIBR, and we do have one of these release notes, we will publish it on this page, and I'll show you another page where these would be able to be seen. But also we have a tool called SendGrid. And so in our customer experience team and our customer readiness teams, we will send out readiness notes or release notes. They can be kind of called interchangeably readiness or release notes. And that will give you information on what is changing, what the timeline is for the change. It could be to a process, again, it could be to the UI, et cetera. But if you're already provisioned access to be able to use one of these applications, then your name, your contact information is already part of a distribution list. So if a change is happening to SIBR, we send out that note. Because you're provisioned access, you would receive an email letting you know that this release note is available and shows you the information and where you can locate it. On this page, you can find additional technical details that can include developer-focused resources. You can find those here, but you can also find those through our developer portal. And the developer portal here, you can see here, it's available on our ISO website. If you go all the way to the bottom of the page, you're going to be able to find the link. So there are several, you can see a lot of different applications in there. The SIBR section within the developer portal, it contains even more comprehensive information for the users who need that deeper technical insight. The developer portal provides technical documentation for SIBR and other ISO provided applications. Here you can find tech specs, which are technical specifications, information about services, information on the environment, availability, and other resources such as user guides, release notes. There may be some frequently asked questions. And also in some of these areas, you can find forum boards where you can see what some of those questions or discussions are that are going on and be able to either participate in it or learn from it. So that's some of the information that is available in the developer site. As I mentioned before, you can find the link to the site at the bottom of the ISO's main website. You'll see here that this site does require sign-in to access, but it's not the same process as a certificate to get into an ISO tool or one of the secured portals. This will allow you to sign up and put your information in there to create an account, create a password, and then you're going to be able to access this. So you won't need to contact your user access administrator to be able to create this account in the developer site. So once you're in here, and here's an example of clicking on the SIBR page, this is some of the information you're going to be seeing. You're going to be finding information about the different environments, maybe what their availabilities are, if there are changes, if there are going to be updates, that kind of information, such as information on map stage, production. Again, you're going to be able to find the technical specifications, etc. And you can also click on the resource link, and that's going to help you drill down to even more documentation. So for EDAM and other upcoming changes, if you drill down into the business user documentation folder, it's going to pop up a page, and then there's a folder on there, and it's called Upcoming Futures folder. And so that has more information that is located there. Some of the same information that you found on the SIBR bidding page on the public website. But if we click on there, this is going to be some of the information that you're seeing in this particular folder. And this does provide the documentation related to upcoming changes, and that's including the SIBR Scheduling Coordinator User Guide for DAME, which is, again, the day-ahead market enhancements, and provides additional detail on the enhancements that are being introduced. So earlier when I referenced Section 2 of the User Guide as being a valuable resource for the detailed information, this is the guide that I was referring to. So more content is going to be added. This version is a draft. It is continuing to be updated as we continue to finalize things, test them. This guide is being rewritten and will be available prior to go live. And we'll also be able to reference this and the changes that may be occurring in these future trainings. So it's also a good idea to check back periodically, to check the version number, check the date that it was posted, so you have a better idea of the latest, that you're ensuring that you have the latest version. Also on this page, you can access the SIBR business rules for DAME and EDAM update version 12.3.4. That's the one that's available right now. This is a very important document, because this SIBR business rules for DAME and EDAM spreadsheet is an essential resource for researching and understanding the business rules that determine whether or not your bid is going to be accepted, rejected, or modified. So becoming familiar with these rules is going to help you ensure that your bid submissions meet the necessary criteria and reduce the likelihood of bid errors. So, and when we talk about meeting the necessary criteria, meeting that criteria so that your bids can be absorbed into the market and then be optimized accordingly. This spreadsheet includes 3 tabs. So there's business rules, figures, and terms. The business rules tab lists all the rules that are related to bid submissions. This includes the applicable market, such as day ahead or real time. It includes identification numbers for their different rules, their descriptions, and some other key details to those rules. These same rules are going to appear within the SIBR tool, and those will appear when bid results are populated. So that can help you understand why your bid, got what what it did, whether it was accepted, again, if it was rejected, modified, is invalid. It's going to give you all of these rules so that you can troubleshoot that response and make any changes that might be necessary. So these do populate in the tool, and these are pieces of information that if you do have a third-party software that you use for submitting your bids, they're populated in there as well. So this is a really key part. You'll see these again in the UI as a result, but looking at these, you can run a sort through the spreadsheet to be able to look into that information further. So it's a really good tool for you. The next, excuse me, the next tab is the Figures tab. This provides visual diagrams that correspond to specific business rules and offers a little more helpful context. And then finally, there's the Terms tab, and that defines the important terminology that's going to be used in the bidding process, such as invalid bid, must offer obligation, minimum uptime, and other resource attributes that are sourced from master file. So when you get a notice back and you're not sure what that means, you're like, I understand the words, but I don't understand the context, you can go back to this business rules spreadsheet, go back to the terms page, and run a search for that particular term, and it's going to give you more context that will help you determine what maybe your next steps need to be. So now we're going to talk about bid creation and the submission processes. So there are several ways that you're going to be able to participate in the extended day ahead market, but it really depends on your resource capabilities. Excuse me. Market participants can elect to submit bids for energy and other various capacity products. So energy bids are those that are submitted on behalf of the physical supply and demand. And convergence bids, those are the virtual supply and virtual demand bids. Those are financial positions only. They're not backed by physical resource. And those are taken in the day ahead market, then liquidated in the real-time market. So convergence bidding, it's part of today's ISO footprint. So anyone that's been in the full markets, the ISO day ahead market, they can choose and be certified to participate in convergence bidding. But for EDAM, this is currently just an optional feature. So EDAM entities can elect whether or not to enable convergence bidding in their area. So that is a choice that you can make. But again, that needs to be a decision made at the balancing authority area, the EDAM entity level. So those are energy bids, and they can be submitted for economic, which is megawatts plus dollar values, and then they can also be self-scheduled, so price takers, so megawatt only, no price. From a transmission standpoint, with EDAM, with WEIM, we had energy transfer system resources. That's being extended to the day ahead. We've taken out the energy and called them TSRs, which are the transfer system resources, and that's being extended to the day ahead market, and it can be used for the transfer activity that happens between these EDAM balancing authority areas, and it can be for energy and capacity. So we're going to dig deeper into how to submit bids for the TSRs and the different types of those, as I mentioned before, in session 3 of this training series. So there will be more information on that. So it's important to maintain resources to ensure the stability of the energy grid, and we can do that, in the form of capacity, which can be bid into the market. So ancillary services are capacity products. They can include regulation up and down, and then also the operating reserves, spin and non-spin. And this is all to, make sure that we maintain that system reliability. So in phase 1 of EDAM, that only supports the EDAM entities to self-provision, which is also referred to as self-schedule, their ancillary services. So that if you're interested in learning more as we go through and continue the evolution of EDAM after the May 1st go live, this is something that will be discussed. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, definitely stay tuned to the ISO calendar and get yourself locked into the working groups and the stakeholder processes, and that way you'll be able to have more input and more understanding of when and how this may evolve. Imbalance reserves and reliability capacity are two new services that or products that have been introduced and will be part of the DAME initiative that will be going live with DAME and EDAM on May 1st. Imbalance reserves, they're procured during the integrated forward market process in the day-ahead market. And these provide a market with a mechanism to address each of the balancing authority areas' expected range of uncertainty when they're comparing their day-ahead load forecast to the real-time consumption and comparing your solar and wind forecasts to real-time outputs. The reliability capacity product is also part of DAME, and it's procured during the RUC, or residual unit commitment process, in the day-ahead market. So the reliability capacity, that is going to provide balancing authorities with the upward and downward dispatch capability, and that ensures sufficient physical supply scheduled in the day ahead. And we'll talk about how that works in bidding in the next class. The flexible ramping products, those are not bid separately. Instead, they're awarded based on the energy bids that are submitted, and they provide additional upward and downward ramping capability in the real-time market to manage that demand and make sure that the renewable forecasting uncertainty, we're managing all that by keeping some capacity in reserve for dispatches should they be needed. So data that's submitted in SIBR or through any tool, but since we're focusing on SIBR, when this information goes in, your bid submissions, the data, it goes through a series of checks and balances before that data can be used in market optimization processes. So many of which occur behind the scenes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to walk through the processes that the tool performs as it evaluates and validates your bid submissions. In our next class, that's when we're going to walk through the steps actually using the UI, the SIBR UI, and the different screens and different locations, the different fields that you're going to be able to input this information in and where you can go to validate it. So again, we're going to be just looking at the processes that are behind it, because the more that you can understand the underlying processes, that's going to allow you to have more of the context needed to make informed decisions, and then be able to confidently navigate each one of the steps in SIBR, as well as in your own bidding tools if you're using those. So we're going to look at the process flows right now, and first we're going to start with the day-ahead bid creation and submission. So first, SIBR is going to take these financial and self-scheduled bids from the certified scheduling coordinators or the bid submitters for the different resources that are modeled into the ISO market. So again, as we're coming into the market, there's a lot of modeling to make sure that the resources are accounted for. So when bids go in, and it's going to check against master file to make sure that that information is accurate, that's all taken into account. So though the process of using the tool really is actually straightforward, it's important to understand the nuances as well. So for instance, if you're looking here at this process, there is a difference between the term created and a submitted bid. And so created is, and you kind of walk through it and explain it, but a created bid is, oops, sorry, and I apologize, I jumped ahead. A created bid is one that is saved in the system's database. It's something that you're working on, but it hasn't been submitted to be considered for market optimization. So an SC or an endorsed user to be able to use SIBR uses this tool to create the bid by entering the values for all the bid components. There's some simple validations that are done at this point, such as making sure that there are no alpha characters and numeric fields, those kind of changes, to make sure that there's nothing that is, like a typo at this point. But then after the bid has been created, it's submitted by clicking a button on the bid creation page. At this point, the system now queues the bid for validation by the rules engine and informs the user that the bid has been submitted. So almost think of it as your creation, created bid is kind of your scratch pad, your initial one, but then submitted means, hey, I'm ready for it to go through the validation processes that the rules engine is going to put it through. After the bid is submitted, the system maintains a complete history of the bid and the actions performed. So then you, the user, can view the bid as well as use it as the basis for creating another bid. So information is stored in there, and it doesn't always have to be started from scratch. You can use information that's already been submitted or saved in this database. Once the bid is submitted, it is available for the SIBR rules engine, like I mentioned before, to perform that validation. So now we move to the day-ahead bid validation that you saw a moment ago, that I went ahead a little bit, but there is a process now where SIBR validates those submitted bids, again, in the SIBR business rules, and those are based on the system's operating parameters. So validation is going to consist of multiple steps, and most of those will be seamless to the user. There's a lot going on in that engine, but then that validation, that content validation, is going to determine if the bid adheres to the structural rules that are required of all bids, and that's going to ensure that they include all of the required components, that the units or services in the bid actually exist, etc. So it's going to be validating against reality as far as what is actually in the system, what is in master file, what kind of data is available that gives you the content, so it can look back and say, is this actually true and feasible? If the content check fails, what you're going to see is a result that shows rejected bid. But once the content validation succeeds, the bid validation verified that the various components of the bid adhere to the applicable market rules. If this validation passes, the bid then becomes eligible to be used in the market. So like I mentioned before, much of this is being done in the background, but then you're going to receive information if there's any kind of errors, but again, if the validation is completed, the user is going to be informed of that as well, and will receive an error analysis. If all validation to this point passes, the bid becomes termed temporarily valid bid, or if it fails, it's going to receive the term invalid bid. Earlier, I mentioned on the spreadsheet, the business rules spreadsheet, in the third tab, the terms tab, if you wanted to, make sure that you understand temporarily valid bid, invalid bid, you can go to that tab and get more information about these terms. So that's a good example of kind of some of the terminology that you're going to see and how you can go make sure that you're really understanding it. So the next step is, once that system has created that temporarily valid bid, we're going to go continue with the day-ahead bid processing. This is going to be based on market requirements or prior agreements, and then the bid may be accepted as it is, or it may end up being modified by the system. So the system is going to analyze the temporarily valid bid, and then depending on the master file data, that data contained in the bid and the market rules, SIBR may automatically modify the bid to produce a valid bid that can be accepted in the designated ISO market, so maybe in the day ahead or real time. So if the bid is acceptable as is, it's going to be termed conditionally valid bid for the dates beyond the latest master file date. And it would be a valid bid for the date the date the last master file was received. If the bid is acceptable only after the system has automatically modified it, it's going to be referred to as conditionally modified bid, and that's going to be for the dates beyond the latest master file date and would be a modified bid for the date that the last master file upload data was received. So at this point, you, the SIBR user, would be, have the option. You could either view the bid and then make the choice to cancel it. If you do cancel the bid, it will be retained in the system database, but it's not going to be processed any further. So it's still going to be there, but it's just not moving forward through the process. The option to cancel is only going to be for those market accepted bids. So those bids that are termed conditionally modified, conditionally valid, or have a master file inserted status, those will, those are the ones that you can cancel. But don't use the delete for market accepted bids. Delete is a function that's only used for bids that are still in the create. Remember we talked about the difference between create and submitted. If they were invalid, then you can delete those, or if they received a rejected status, you can delete those as well. The other option at this point is to modify and resubmit the bid. So that's something you can do. And in that case, the original bid is retained in the system database, but it's considered an obsolete bid, which is not going to be processed any further. But if the bid is resubmitted, processing begins again, as we showed in the earlier slide. So it kind of resets to that, starting that process over again. SIBR will allow the bidders to use a conditionally valid bid or conditionally modified bid or a master file inserted bid as the basis for a new bid resubmission. The last option you have is to leave the conditionally modified or conditionally valid or master file inserted bid as is to be processed in the designated ISO market. So again, day ahead, real time, those markets. So next, looking at the bid validation after the master file update. So the master file changes are introduced into the system once per day, very early in the morning. So this can affect bid acceptance. So all bids must be revalidated after the final master file update and before the designated trading period when the bid will take effect. This is why in the previous slides we talked about conditionally, because bids, like we mentioned before, when we look at the market timeline, can be submitted up to 7 days in advance of the market close, but they need to be revalidated based on the data that's been updated in master file. We've got to take into account any changes that were made through the master file update process. Could be something about your physical limitations of a resource, contract business rules, etc. So that needs to be looked at. So you don't want to put in your bid 7 days in advance and say, we're all good, because maybe they'll pass on 7 days out. But somebody may have made a change to resource data, and that can have an impact on your bids. So that's why we revalidate those, and they can now switch from conditional into a temporarily valid bid. So bids are going to retain the status of conditional until that master file update has occurred, and that's going to be for the designated trading period. After the master file has been updated and the latest gas price index and commitment cost adders have all been received, any of these conditional bids are reevaluated via a similar process. So after that master file is updated, the bid processing steps are repeated, but this time it's to produce either a valid bid or a modified bid. So this process is similar to the one prior to the master file update. The system can either accept the bid as is or it can modify it. but this time the bid is given a new title, and that's either going to be master file inserted, valid bid, or modified bid. The conditional status is no longer there. It's gone because the bid has now been processed with the master file data that's going to be used on the date in which the bid applies. So the SIBR user is going to be able to view the bid as before, and then may choose to either resubmit the bid, which triggers the processes we just went through to be repeated. They can cancel the bid, or they can allow the bid to stand. So any of the bids that are resubmitted or canceled are going to be retained in the system database, but they're not going to be processed further, though they may be viewed by the SIBR user, and you can then choose to use that as a foundation for your future bids. So again, you've got a lot of data in there. You might just need to make tweaks because it's still going to be there. You won't always have to start from scratch. So in some cases, for certain generating resources, a scheduling coordinator may be required to bid in the full range of available capacity for that resource on a daily basis. If they fail to do that, the system will create a bid on the SC's behalf. So that, again, this is a requirement. This kind of bid is known as a generated bid, but that would not be created until after the close of the market. So that makes sure that it's going to avoid conflicting with any bids that you might be entering more at the last minute. These bids are based upon data in the master file and in the resource adequacy obligation data. So for those that are already in the ISO balancing authority where RA, resource adequacy is considered, there may be bids that are submitted on your behalf. Those can be viewed by the scheduling coordinator, but they can't be modified. So as the processes are going, status icons are going to give you a quick visual indication of your bid status at the various points in these processes. These icons will help you immediately see whether a bid was accepted, rejected, if it requires further action, and provide you an at-a-glance understanding of where your bid submission stands as it moves through SIBR. So this is an example of some of the icons that you will see, but section 2.2.2 of the SIBR user guide is going to provide more status icons and their definitions, and that's going to be based on the type of bid you submitted. So you might see these in different contexts, but is it a bid insertion? Is it a trade? There are going to be different pieces of context. So looking at that section is going to give you more of these icons, and you'll be able to kind of start, getting familiar with those. It's going to be something that's a useful tool to help start you on the process of going, do I need to take action? And where do I need to start? What is it that I need to do at this point? So based on the status icons, you can click on a bid to open up a pop-up that's going to show you which one of the business rules were triggered and caused the bid to either fail validation, such as in this case, or you can see that it passed, but you can look for more information on the business rules that apply to a certain situation by clicking on the bid. As I mentioned, that SIBR business rules spreadsheet earlier on, this is where some of those rules might apply in this pop-up. So for example, in this case, we've got an invalid status icon that has appeared. And then by selecting the bid, the pop-up displays the specific business rules that were preventing the bid from passing validation. Here we can see that the issue is that the self-scheduled existing transmission contract, or ETC, schedule is not registered, and the megawatt quantity that were entered exceeds the maximum amount registered. So these rules, they reference information that will give you a clear starting point for troubleshooting your bid, so you can make the necessary corrections to your bid as needed. If it was just bid failed, bid invalid, and you didn't have these rules to give you context, you'd have to do a lot more digging. But this gives you that information to go, okay, maybe I selected the wrong contract. maybe I put in a value that was different. Maybe it was supposed to be a 10 megawatt and I, put in 100 and by accident. So it's going to give you a guide to where you need to start to make those adjustments. In the next couple of classes, we'll talk about the various tabs of SIBR, including the submissions of the various types of bids. So we'll get into more of these practices, but and you could see where the business rules really do have an impact. So let's look at some references that are available to you. The Business Practice Manual for Market Instruments. If you haven't looked at that yet, it's a useful guide that is dedicated entirely to explaining how scheduling coordinators submit bids into the market. Section 2.5.2 of the BPM for Market Operations, that provides additional detail that specifically focus on bids and the requirements that are associated with submitting those bids. Knowledge articles can be accessed through the Customer Inquiry Dispute and Information System, or CIDI, and there is a knowledge base link at the bottom of the ISO website as well. There are several knowledge articles that cover a lot of topics, so it's not just SIBR, it's not just bidding, variety of topics, but this is one in particular that you could check out, and we provided the link here. These articles address frequently asked questions and provide guidance on a wide range of topics. So this one here is helpful for understanding why a bid may not have been accepted. So it's titled Reasons Day-Ahead Market Results May Not Seem Economic. And so I highly recommend you checking that one out, because that might be something that helps guide you as you're determining what your bid's going to look like, what that structure is going to look like. The resource performance expectations of dispatch and operating instructions. We put this in here. It's a computer-based training, and there are other recordings of different trainings that support this as well. But the reason we put it in here is because the bids that you're submitting, when you get awarded in the day ahead, you're going to need to then, possibly put those into the real time based on your awards. But the resources then need to perform according to what those awards are. That's very important. So they definitely work together. The bids that you're putting in help determine what that reliability need is going to be, and through the optimization processes. So that's a good one to check out, where it's like your resources need to be performing based on what's awarded and what you either get advisories for that resource or actual dispatch operating instructions. Earlier, I also showed you the SIBR business rules for bidding webpage. There's a link here for that. And in Section 30 of the tariff, that provides information on the submission of bid and self-schedule submission for all of the ISO markets. Additional resources include the market participant portal. So we talked about that a little earlier. Here is the link to that portal. We also have the developer portal, which we talked about. There's a link for that, as well as the link for the user guide that we talked about for GAME, and then the SIBR business rules spreadsheet. So we talked about them earlier, but we put them in here for links so that you can access those more accurately. We also have several training resources that have already been created, and links are provided here. And these include computer-based trainings on economic bids and self-schedules, more general information. There's EDAM training for bidding basic concepts. And then again, that link to how to gain access to the ISO applications. We've got some instructor-led training that takes you a little bit deeper into the bidding intermediate for EDAM, as well as a scheduling coordinator course that talks about that as well. So there's a couple of very useful links that you can go to and start kind of, figuring out the application of your bids. As I mentioned, there are a couple of those computer-based trainings, and we have the ISO Training Center. This is located under the Stakeholder Center. So if you're on our website, you look at the Stakeholder Center, you'll be able to click on the ISO Training Center link. And that offers a wide range of training resources. and including those that are dedicated to, under the training topics, that are dedicated to the Western energy markets. So this one says Western energy imbalance markets. We're actually changing that, or I think we actually have changed that to say Western energy markets, because we have information that encompasses both the WEIM and EDAM. And so you can go to that link and you're going to be able to find a full suite of computer-based training courses. Here's the titles, as well as some recordings for the trainings that we've done so far. And then in this training, other trainings that we do on cyber, those will also be put under there, under the content area. So this is a good resource to check out, because this is where you're going to find a lot more of the training. And if we do something that, a class, we will also, on the main page of our training center, you can find that under recent materials. You can run a search there. But there's a lot of tabs. We invite you to explore our ISO Training Center for more information. We're completing some and posting those more every day. So this is a really good resource, place to start for you. You may have already checked it out, but we do have an EDAM frequently asked questions guide. This is a web-based resource, and it provides questions and answers on EDAM. So we are going to be continuing to update this. We just recently, last week, in fact, included a whole new section that's dedicated to intertime modeling and bidding. And there are questions that are involved in there that were talked about in Friday's Q&A workshop. And we will continue to update that. We're going to be putting in several by the end of this month that go on that talk about several topics. And so it's a good resource to check out from an EDAM standpoint at large. You can find this guide by using the link in this presentation, but you can also go to the ISO Center. That's linked there under the Western Energy Markets tab. It's available on the EDAM stakeholder page, on the WEM, the Western Energy Markets website, under Join EDAM, and then you can also find it on the WEIM portal if you're a WEIM entity, and or EDAM entity, that there is certificate access that needs to be provided in order to enter that site. And then there's also the city knowledge articles that I mentioned before. If you have questions about where to find this guide, you can contact us at customerreadiness@caiso.com. And we can point you to it. There are early drafts of the EDAM BPM documents and business requirement specifications that are available. They are detailing the changes that are due to EDAM. There's also that supplemental guide for the ISO BAA supplement to the EDAM business practice manual. That there's a draft available there. And then there's also links to the different resources, especially the business requirement specifications, which provide more detail of the changes that are happening because of DAME and because of EDAM and because of the ISO BAA participation. The draft, we still have the BPM in draft form, the BPM in the supplement, but they will be going through our stakeholder process, our proposed revision request BPM process in probably the early mid-March timeframe. So we encourage you to check that out. After it goes through that process, the stakeholder process, it will end up becoming an official business practice manual. But right now it's in draft form. I highly encourage you to check it out. A little bit about environments and support. So the ISO maintains several distinct environments so that the market participants and our internal teams can work safely without having to affect the real-time grid operations. So there are color-coded bands at the top of ISO UI, so including cyber, and that's going to let you know a quick reference which environment you're in. In short, if you want to do testing, do not use the environment with the red band at the top, because that is live, that is production. And if you put something in just to kind of test it and see how it's going to go, it is going to go through it has the potential to go through the whole process for the market. And, so that could cause some issues. So paying attention to what these different colors mean is important. So let's kind of walk them down because each environment has a distinct purpose. The production environment, or prod, as you'll hear it referred to, it's the live system where all the actual market activity occurs. So every bid, schedule, settlement, and operational data exchange that happens here, this is live, and so it's tightly controlled, and it's only updated with any of the changes that are happening because of, EDAM, GAME, or any other initiatives. It's all going to go through a series of very serious testing before we actually update that production environment. And lots of messaging goes back and forth to let everybody know when those changes are going to be made. Stage is your yellow band that you're going to see at the top, and it's a near replica of production. It uses it's used to validate any kind of upcoming software releases, market rule changes, participant integrations. Because it mirrors the live system so closely, it is a primary space where the organizations can go in and confirm that their systems and their processes will function correctly once these changes go live. So it's being used, in when you're in market sim, it's used when you're in parallel ops, and like I said, it provides this opportunity to perform as close to real time as possible without having the same kind of implications as the real as the live environment. There's also map stage. It sits a little earlier in the testing cycle, and it focuses on the market participant readiness. So it's commonly used for connectivity checks. It can be used for API validation, and also it's used for early functional testing. So while it's not as strict or fully aligned with production as stage, it does provide a safe place to identify the issues before we move into any kind of more formal testing. So when you're looking at the different tools, understand what their capability, what they're touching, and that's going to, help you understand, you might not have as clean of information in map stage, but you're going to be able to do tests on functionality and what have you. Prod's going to be how it works, but it's also live data. So, thinking of those before you go into the environments is going to be very important. As I mentioned before, we have CIDI, the Customer Inquiry, Dispute, and Information System, and this is a central platform that's available for submitting questions, issues, and requests. Participants can use CIDI to open tickets on topics that could range from market results to technology problems to training needs. So if you wanted to see additional training, about certain topics, you could put in a CIDI ticket. If you're running into technical issues, you can put that in there. So it's selecting what the reasons are, and then those get routed by our customer experience team to the correct subject matter experts, to the correct teams to be able to, search that down, provide responses, maybe make adjustments, etc. It's also the system that's used to file settlements disputes, and also a place where you can access those knowledge articles that we're talking about. But when you're submitting the ticket, one of the things to really be thinking about is to clearly identify the environment that this might be, especially if it's an application and it's the environment. Which environment is it? Is it in production? Is it in the map stage? Are you in market sim? What's happening at that particular time? What's that activity? And also, please include as much information, as much detail as possible, so that the subject matter experts can take that information and provide you the best answer in a most timely way. So if you were to be in SIBR, let's say, and you got a result that you didn't think you were supposed to get, that would be a perfect example to take a screenshot. Make sure it has the timestamp on there, and then submit that. What's the environment? What was the timestamp? What was maybe the rule that fired? All of that information, and provide that in a screenshot or a series of screenshots. And that way, our subject matter experts can go through and be able to look at it, have context. It's going to be a lot quicker for them to provide, that information. They can go and try to replicate it if possible, but they do have that information, or they can say, yes, that was a problem on the day that you had it, but we know that we made a fix, so you shouldn't see that anymore. At least they can provide that information. So as much detail as you can provide, not just as we're going to get ready for EDAM, but even afterwards. Making sure that you're as detailed as possible really helps our subject matter experts out to, like I mentioned, trace the problem and deliver an accurate and timely response. It is important to note that only scheduling coordinators can enter information into CIDI. So if you are not a scheduling coordinator, but you're under a scheduling coordinator and you have a question, please reach out to your scheduling coordinator and say, hey, can you submit this CIDI case on our behalf? That is the communications model. So we ask that you do that, be as specific as possible. And if you're just kind of a little plug for training, if there's something that you want to see in training and you ask for that ticket to go in, please make sure to provide the individual's name and contact information, because we will do a follow-up with you and figure out what it is that you're really looking for in a training, and we can determine what the best need is, way to meet that need. Will it be a training class? Will it be a reference document? We'll make that decision based on what you're looking for. If you do have general questions, though, there is a contact us link that's on the ISO webpage, and that can get routed to the right people as well. So what's next? Earlier, we talked about those 3 steps. So this course and the presentation, those are available on the ISO portal, our training center, and then we're going to talk about the cyber fundamentals, the general bidding. Again, please sign up for the daily briefing, because in the next week we're going to be putting out training dates, so you can put those on your calendar and be ready to join us. And then the advanced cyber bidding concepts, that we're going to cover those as well in the early March timeframe. So be looking for these trainings. We're going to continue to provide more and more detail for you. So please tell us how we're doing. There's a link here to our survey. This is the same survey that we send out for all of our trainings. Be as specific as possible. How are we doing? But even more than that, it's like, what kind of training are you looking for? What information would you like that would be helpful for you to do your job? And it might be for cyber, but it might be for other processes, what have you. And like I said, please make sure that you put your contact information. Anonymous is fine, absolutely, but if you're really looking for other training, if we don't have your contact information, we can't reach back out to you, get clarity, and then follow up on your request. So please help us improve future trainings, and that absolutely helps us as our team continues to grow our training, improve our training. There's a lot more to come from the training front that's going to be happening, that we're rolling out over the next couple of years. So please stay tuned, and like I said, keep us together, keep us in the loop for what you're looking for, so we can make sure that we take account for that, figure out where we can plug it in. So thank you for your participation in going through this site, this course. So for clarification on anything that was presented in this training, please send an email to customerreadiness@caiso.com. That's our team's group. We have a shared inbox. So either myself or someone else from our team can always make sure that we can cover that and get back to you with an answer. As we mentioned before, you can submit a CIDI ticket. Please be as detailed as possible. You can contact your scheduling coordinator if you're not one, to ask them to put in a CIDI ticket, or they might have some information on how they're interacting with the ISO, may be able to answer your questions before you even need to get to the ISO level. And then also there's the contact us link that's on the ISO webpage to submit general questions. Thank you very much for your time. We look forward to continuing, training and learning with you through these processes. And so we hope that you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next training. Thank you.